Good morning and welcome to Live Without Limits. Unlock your potential, the ultimate blueprint to transform and shift your mindset. I'm your host, Davina Shensky, and today we're discussing from fear to fulfillment the power or in this podcast we'll explore how to overcome the fears and doubts that hold us back from living fully. I'm so glad you're here today, and because we're almost or about to dive into the topic that many of us can relate to, fear of being unloved. And I grew up in a home where it was very toxic, very negative, and especially at a time when there were few opportunities for people with disabilities. And in many ways, my family looked at me and saw someone who was never going to succeed. Therefore, think about this for a moment. Have you ever felt like you're not enough or wondered if people truly care about you for who you are, not just for what you can do for them? It's a painful feeling, the fear that we might not be lovable or that others might not value us the way we value them. But here's the thing, this fear, while incredibly common, can have a deep impact on your relationships, your self worth, and your overall happiness. And for a minute, I'm just going to go back and say this because I think it is just so important to think about. I was born in 1951, and in 1951, society did not even recognize its disability community as even existing. And in my family's eyes, when I looked at my parents, I never saw two people who really loved each other. It was more of a feeling of that my mother wanted financial security and she married a man that could give her that. And my father was always liking to put on dinner parties for the judges and the lawyers that he worked with. So her job was to be a hostess. And in that way, they were companionable. But you never saw any real show of respect between them or love between them. And when you think about that, when you think back about did your parents truly love each other? Did they touch each other? Did they show affection? I mean, as young children, we may not feel that we like seeing that, but at the same time, they're showing you what a real loving relationship is. And if you don't see that between your parents and they don't respect you or they don't respect each other, then they're not going to respect you and they're not going to show you how to treat yourself. Therefore, what we're going to do is we're going to uncover how this fear affects our lives, and more importantly, how we can begin to heal and cultivate self love. I'll share insights into why we feel this way, where the fear of being unloved comes from, and provide you with actionable steps that you can take to learn how to love yourself in a way that transforms your life. So, let's get started. The fear of being unloved can feel all consuming, especially when you're looking at validation and approval from others. And this is something that we all look for. We've all been there, haven't we? That sense of longing for someone to tell us that we matter, that we're enough, just as we are. And when we don't get that validation, it can feel like a direct blow to our self worth. This fear often stems from a variety of sources. Maybe it's childhood experiences where love felt conditional, or past relationships where love was tied to our actions rather than our true selves. It can also come not from not being loved or accepted. Or rather, let's look at it this way. It can also come from societal pressure, the idea that we need to look, act, and be a certain way to be loved and accepted. Have you ever seen those ads on TV where all they do is they project the perfect human being and what they should look like? And everybody has a different body type, and you're never going to look exactly like someone else. So therefore, they need to show in their advertising the common person that it doesn't matter who you are, that it's all about you. So, in relationships, this fear can lead to insecurity, jealousy, or an overwhelming need to please others. We might start to question our value, consistently wondering if we're doing enough to keep people around. And when we're not able to validate ourselves internally, we become reliant on others to fill the gap, which can create unhealthy dynamics and even lead to burnout or feelings of isolation. In terms of happiness, constantly seeking love and approval from others can keep us in a cycle, never feeling satisfied. We think, once I get this period's or this person's love, or this external validation, I'll feel whole. But that moment often comes and goes, and we're left feeling unfulfilled, constantly searching for the next source of validation. This is where the journey towards self love begins, acknowledging that the fear of being unloved is real and powerful, but it doesn't have to define us. So, we'll learn the truth that we can't fully experience the love of others until we first learn to love ourselves. Okay, self love is crucial to a healthy, balanced relationship. And that's why it is key to truly feeling fulfilled. There are some really powerful practices that you can use to begin changing your mindset and actions step by step until self love becomes a default mode. And the truth is that we can't fully express the love of others until we first learn how to love ourselves. But the good news is that this process doesn't have to be overwhelming. It's about making small, consistent choices that affirm our worth and gradually rewire the way we see ourselves. So, if you stick with me, by the end of this episode, you'll have a clear path to start letting go of the fear of being unloved and placing it with the unshakable power of self love. So let's take a deeper dive into the emotional toll of the fear of being unloved and how it impacts our relationships and happiness. To understand the fear of being unloved, we need to look at where it comes from. This fear is deeply rooted in our past experiences and societal influences. For many of us, it starts in childhood. Maybe we grew up in an environment where love felt conditional, where we had to earn affection by achieving something, behaving perfectly, or meeting someone else's expectations. This can leave a lasting imprint, teaching us that love isn't freely given, but something we have to fight for. Now, before I go on, I want to say it this way. If you look at different personalities and you look at someone who's a perfectionist and they expect perfection in themselves, then they're going to expect perfection in someone else, even their children. And sometimes, if their lives aren't fulfilled, they're going to try to live and fulfill their lives through their children. And what they're doing is showing you or making you feel as though you have to meet their expectations and be that perfect person that they want you to be in order to have their love. So, rejection is another powerful factor, whether it's being excluded from a group of friends experiencing heartbreak or feeling unseen by those closest to us. Rejection can leave deep emotional scars. Over time, these experiences can make us hesitant to open up, to fully trust others, fearing that we might be rejected again. And then there's the societal pressure. We live in a world that constantly tells us that we're not enough, whether it's through media, advertising, or social norms. We're told that we need to look a certain way, achieve specific milestones, or act in particular ways to be worthy of love. These messages create a toxic loop where we internalize the idea that we need to fix ourselves to be lovable. Here's the thing, each of us are unique and have unique qualities to us. No two people are exactly like, not even twins, or triplets, or any multiples. They we each have our own personality, and we got to be true to who we are and what we want. You can't live your life to satisfy someone else. This fear doesn't just stay in our heads, it shows us, and it shows up as and how we interact with the world. So let's talk about some common ways it manifests. People pleasing. One of the most common behaviors is people pleasing. When we fear being unloved, we go out of our way to make others happy, even at the expense of our own needs. We might say yes when we want to say no, or overextend ourselves just to gain approval. Insecurity in relationships. This fear can also lead to insecurity. In relationships, we might constantly seek reassurance from our partners, feel jealous or possessive or worry that we're not enough for them. These insecurities can create tension and prevent us from fully enjoying our connections. Avoidance. On the flip side, some people respond to this fear by avoiding relationships altogether. They bring emotional walls, distance themselves from others, and avoid vulnerability because it feels safer than risking rejection. Now, I'm going to put this on a flip side. If you've been an abused child, then that becomes your comfort zone. And until you get help to understand why that happens or where it comes from or how to get around it or how to rewire your thinking, then you're going to constantly be putting up walls to avoid being abused again. These behaviors often serve as a coping mechanism, but they can also keep us trapped, reinforcing the very fear that we're trying to escape. The fear of being unloved takes a heavy toll on both our emotional and psychological well being. Let's break it down. Emotionally, this fear can leave us feeling lonely, disconnected, and unworthy, even when we're surrounded by people who care about us. We might struggle to believe that love is real or unconditional. It creates a persistent sense of emptiness, like no amount of external validation is ever enough. Psychologically, it can chip away at our self esteem. When we're constantly questioning our value, we start to believe that something is fundamentally wrong with us. This belief can lead to anxiety, depression, or a lack of confidence that affects us in every area of our lives. In relationships, this fear can create a cycle of dysfunction. People pleasing might make us resentful. Insecurity can push our loved ones away, and avoidance can leave us isolated. It's a vicious cycle that reinforces the very fear that we're trying to escape. The good news is that fear doesn't have to control your life. By understanding where it comes from and how it shows up in your behaviors, you've already taken the first step towards healing. Now, let's clear up a common misconception. Self love and selfishness are not the same thing. There is a difference between self love and selfishness. Selfishness is about prioritizing your needs at the expense of others. It's a me first mentality that disregards the feelings, needs, or well being of those around you. Self love, on the other hand, is about valuing yourself in a way that doesn't diminish others. It's about recognizing your own worth, meeting your own needs, and treating yourself with kindness and respect. Think of it this way: self love is like putting on your own oxygen mask first on an airplane. You can't help others if you're running on empty. Loving yourself doesn't mean you're ignoring or dismissing others. It means you're taking care of yourself so that you can show up fully and authentically in your relationships. When you truly love yourself, it changes the way you interact with others. You no longer approach relationships from a place of fear or neediness. Instead, you bring your whole confident self to the table. Self love allows you to create healthier connections because you're not relying on others to fulfill gaps in your self esteem. You're able to set boundaries and communicate your needs clearly, which fosters mutual respect. You're also less likely to fall into the unhealthy patterns like people pleasing or seeking constant validation. What's more, when you love yourself, you give others permission to do the same. Your confidence and authenticity inspire those around you to show up as their true selves also. It creates a positive feedback loop where both of you and the people in your life thrive. The benefits of self love doesn't stop with the relationships. They ripple out into every area of your life. Increase confidence. When you love yourself, you naturally start to believe in your own abilities and worth. This confidence empowers you to take risks, pursue your goals, and handle challenges with resilience. Better boundaries. Self love helps you recognize what you're willing to accept and where you need to draw the line. Setting boundaries isn't about pushing people away, it's about creating space for relationships to flourish in a healthy way. With self love, your value is no longer tried or tied to external validation. You know your worth and it's unshakable. This sense of self worth allows you to show up authentically without fear of judgment or rejection. The beautiful thing is that self love is not just about how you feel about yourself, it's about the energy you bring into the world. When you love yourself, you radiate positivity, strength, and compassion, and that energy attracts the same in return. Self love isn't selfish, it's the foundation for living a fulfilled, connected, and confident life. By loving yourself, you create space for a healthier relationship, stronger boundaries, and a deeper sense of worth that transform every aspect of your life. Now, we're going to talk about the fear to cultivate self love. Now, let's talk about how acknowledging your fear, how accepting your emotions without judgment, journaling or meditating to uncover where this fear originates. Okay, so when you keep a journal, what are you doing? You're getting deep into your fears and where they come from and why they happen. So, another thing is to think about negative self talk. And I'm going to go back and talk about transactional analysis because in there it talks about what we call, and the secret calls, affirmations. If you are constantly hearing a parent, a teacher, peers, people that you look up to as constantly judging you and constantly telling you that you're a bad person because it's a way for them to control you, what happens? Well, as you keep hearing these things over and over again, you start internalizing them in your head. And when you internalize them in your head, then you're hearing them over and over again to the point that you literally begin to believe it. And that's what you're telling yourself. So once, what you have to do is get out of that negative self talk. You need to learn how to set healthy boundaries and learn to say no and prioritize your own needs. Now, how do we practice self compassion? By treating yourself with kindness during tough times. And remember this, if you treat people badly and you treat yourself badly, then you're telling someone it's okay to treat you that way because that's how you expect to be treated. Therefore, when you understand why you do certain things and you learn how to reprogram your thinking and your behavior, then and only then can you change. How to engage in self love? Well, you have to develop habits that nurture your mental, your emotional, and your physical well being, whether it's exercise, whether it's meditation, whether it's learning how to change your thinking. It's up to you to begin to believe in how you think about yourself and how you want others to see you. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest challenges in today's world, navigating social media and societal expectations without letting them erode your self worth. Social media can feel like a double edged sword. On one hand, it connects us to others, it offers inspiration, but on the other hand, it's a constant stream of created perfection. We see highlights, reels of people's lives, relationships that seem flawless, achievements that look effortless, and appearances that seem unattainable. It's easy to fall into the trap of comparison and feel like we're not measuring up. The key is to remind yourself that social media is not reality. People post their best moments, not their struggles. When you find yourself comparing, take a step back and ask, am I looking at the full picture? Chances are you're not. Another tip, be intentional with your social media use. Follow accounts that uplift and inspire you, not ones that make you feel inadequate. Create your feed like you would a close circle of friends. Fill it with positivity, encouragement, and authenticity. Now, let's shift to your real life circle. Who you surround yourself with has a huge impact on how you view yourself. If you're constantly around people who criticize, dismiss, or belittle you, it's going to be much harder to cultivate self love. Now, before I go on, I want to say this, that I grew up in a home where I had a mother that was constantly negative. She was never going to help me unless I did things the way she wanted them to do it, and that I allowed her to continue to abuse me. And I often said, once I moved out of her house, going back was never an option. And I was better off on the street than I ever was going to be living in the home with her. So sometimes you have to evaluate the home environment you're living in. Is it healthy or is it detrimental to your mental health? And if it's detrimental to your mental health, you have to get away from it completely. Seek out relationships that are supportive, encouraging, and uplifting. These are the people who celebrate your wins, stand by you in tough times, and remind you of your worth when you forget it. If you're not sure who these people are, pay attention to how you feel after spending time with someone. Do you feel energized or valued or drained and unworthy? That's a powerful clue about the nature of the relationship. And if you don't currently have a supportive circle, start building one. Join communities, attend events, or connect with people who share your values and interests. Remember, it's not about the quality of the relationships, or rather, it's not the quantity, but the quality. Now, let's address a big one, reminding yourself that you or your value isn't tied to others' approval or validation. This is easier said than done, right? But here's the truth, your worth is intrinsic. It's not something that you can be given or taken away by someone else. You're valued simply because you exist. One powerful way to reinforce this belief is by practicing self validation instead of seeking praise or approval from others. Start asking yourself, what do I think about this? Am I proud of what I've done? Does this align with my values and goals? When you start validating yourself, you take back the power that you have unknowingly given away. You no longer rely on external validation to feel good about yourself, which frees you to live authentically and unapologetically. Now, this is what I want to say, that only we make ourselves happy, only we make ourselves sad. Now, you have external circumstances that are going on around you, and in that situation, you can feel happy or you can feel sad, but you have to look at what is it in that situation that is making you feel sad, or what in that situation is making you feel happy. And then that helps you understand where you're coming from and who you need to surround yourself with. So here's another great reminder. You need to focus on your unique qualities and strengths. What makes you you? Embrace these traits and celebrate them. The more you appreciate yourself, the less you'll feel the need for others to validate your self worth. Navigating societal pressure, and social media. Surrounding yourself with uplifting people and breaking free from the need for external validation are all critical steps in building unshakable self worth. When you truly believe in your own value, the fear of being unloved begins to fade. Now, before we wrap up, let's recap what we've uncovered in today's episode. We explored the roots of the fear of being unloved, how societal pressures, childhood experiences, and rejection can leave us questioning our worth. We dove into the behaviors this fear creates, how people pleasing, insecurity, and avoidance, and the emotional toll it can take on our relationship and self esteem. We also talked about the transformative power of self love when we prioritize our own self worth. We build a foundation for healthier, more authentic relationships. We stop relying on external validation and start feeling whole within ourselves. We discussed practical ways to maintain our self worth from navigating social media mindfully to surround yourself with supportive people and breaking free from the need for others' approval. These steps are all part of the journey towards self love and fulfillment. So here's my encouragement to you: take one small step towards self love today. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just write down 3 things that you appreciate about yourself. It could be as simple as: I'm a great listener. I handled a tough situation well. Or I'm trying my best and didn't, and that's enough. So, this simple act of acknowledgement can be the first step of a powerful shift in how you see yourself. Self love isn't about grand gestures, it's about consistent, small reminders that you are worthy just as you are. So, thank you for spending this time with me on From Fear to Fulfillment. And if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe, have a review, and share it with someone who might need this message. And remember, you are enough, you are worthy, and you are loved, starting with yourself. And take care. And always think about how you can be the best person that you need to be and live the best quality of life possible.